Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am R. Indira, formerly Professor of Sociology at the University of Mysore and paper coordinator for the course Education and Society. My presentation is based on the module titled Social Reproduction of Education. This module is written by Dr. K.G. Gayatri Devi, formerly faculty at the Institute of Social and Economic Change, Bengaluru. Social reproduction of education is a concept that sets us thinking about the role of education as a leveler. We have always believed that education is the most powerful instrument that can remove socio-economic inequalities by providing equal access and opportunities. However, the mere conferment of the right to equal educational opportunity does not ensure equal utilization of opportunities. Education is basically a social institution that is impacted by other social institutions. So, education is an institution that is often caught in the trap of other socio-economic forces, and it serves as an institution that reinforces and upholds power hierarchies and supports hegemonic structures and practices. So in this module, we take a critical look at the role of the educational institution in leveling social inequalities and raise the question, is education as an institution as equal as it appears? Conflict writers, for example, have argued that education upholds the existing power structures, and both in theory and practice, educational institutions favor those in power, and right from the curriculum to the methodologies adopted in teaching and the goals that educational institutions support, there is a clear agenda to uphold power hierarchies. Now, in this process, the marginalized, the vulnerable, the poor, and those with less exposure to changes taking place across the world are sidelined. What then is social reproduction of education? In a structurally unequal society like India, access to and use of education is socially conditioned by a number of factors, the chief among them being social stratification based on caste that distinguish between one social group as hierarchically superior or inferior to another. Using birth as a determinant of status, people were grouped into watertight compartments. It is this situation that has been described by sociologists as a closed system. Access to education was traditionally the monopoly of only a few groups, placed at the higher echelons, while those at the bottom of the ladder suffered continuous deprivation and exclusion. The political arithmetic theory of sociology of education stresses upon understanding how school structures wielded much power and influence in the structure of class, gender, ethnic, temporal and spatial inequalities. Based on the output of field research, the political arithmetic theory led to further specializations like rational choice theory and cultural reproduction theory, and further paved the way for a new sociology of education in the 70s, which insisted upon the use of more and more qualitative analysis in this direction. The structural functionist approach saw in education a ray of hope which, as a social institution, strives to keep society healthy and progressive. Its other roles fall in the realm of socialization and preparing citizens to take on roles for the efficient functioning of the social system. But conflict theory looks at the situation as one characterized by competing groups with varying goals, aspiration, demands, and means of achieving them. Terms like exploitation, oppression, marginalization, and alienation are keys in understanding society from this perspective. Factors such as ethnicity, class, gender, region, religion, language, and political participation are essentially impacting the entry of children from different groups into educational institutions and also influence the outcome of such participation in formal learning. Origin and growth of the concept of social reproduction of education. It is believed that the concept social reproduction of education originated in discussions on social inequality propounded by Karl Marx in his work, emphasizing upon structures and activities responsible for perpetuating social inequality and injustice across generations. Sociologists have also spoken about the types of capital that contribute to social reproduction. They are human capital, cultural capital, financial capital, and social capital. As the names clearly suggest, different forms of capital reinforce each other. Human capital is the network of human relationships necessary for social reproduction. It is influenced by cultural capital, referring to the skill, talent, and entrepreneurship qualities inherent in a person that actually support social reproduction of education. Financial capital, basing itself on income and wealth of a person, in turn influences cultural capital. Lastly, social capital is the sum total of all the above that hones the ability of the educated person to use knowledge to achieve higher levels. If not altered by education, the system will be reproducing the stratified and hegemonic social layers that arrest development. Social reproduction is the process where the elements of inequality based on stratification flow down to the whole system and across generations. There is a constant conflict between forces that try to maintain the status quo. The argument by Bourdieu is that the practices of the dominant group get legitimized, the marginalized students are compelled to be alienated from the educational capital as they do not possess the required cultural capital. In the long run, such students who are not able to cope with are naturally eliminated by the system. Reproduction of inequality through education. In many societies, institutions of schooling and higher education have been treading on the wrong path. Due to inbuilt and inherent structural constraints that surround it, educational system in India, for example, has closed its doors to vulnerable sections, and it is designed to cater to the interests of the dominant classes. It is unable to escape from reproduction of inequality. Conflict theories argue that individual achievement in education is conditioned by social forces that go against it and often cause failures. Further, they also criticize the pattern of education, curriculum, syllabus, mode of teaching and learning, describing it as one designed by those in power, representing their values and goals as against those of the subaltern populations. Institutions of learning, whether primary, middle, high school or beyond, generally operate in postmodern societies as mechanisms of social reproduction of social inequality as they portray the ideals of the dominant class. Similarly, then the gist of Bourdieu's views on reproduction of social inequality through education rests upon the endemic nature of class inequality. He argued that there is intimate association between the two, where class inequality through education is perpetuated with dominant value systems. As a result, different educational outcomes are the inevitable result of both cultural capital and habitus, playing a dominant role in social and educational reproduction. The primary institutions in society, such as the family, engage themselves in socializing children to prepare them to receive the transmitted social practices, codes, and values of the new culture. Success is further invested in academic markets for further social and cultural reproduction. Contemporary debates in social reproduction of education. Contemporary research on the issue of social reproduction of education reflect the continued and increased transmission of educational inequalities, favoring the upper classes and widening the gap between them and the disadvantaged sections of society in question. In the following section, we try to understand some of the factors that have a bearing on the role of education as a perpetrator of inequalities created by social and economic forces. An attempt is also made to identify the positive changes that education could bring about if an inclusive and proactive model is implemented. Parental roles. The overarching social and economic cultural changes all around have demanded a different model of parental involvement in children's education, according to many researches undertaken in recent years. This extends both inside and outside the school. But what matters most here is the growing balancing act between middle-class parents with high economic resources and those with high cultural resources vis-à-vis the challenges faced by the working classes. In an unequal setup, the battle for spoils is sharpened and creates a situation in which what one group wins, another loses. Role of globalization. With the onset of the reforms period, particularly the structural adjustment policies resulting in the threefold processes of globalization, privatization, and liberalization, the world has been witnessing greater international interdependence and partnership with speedy restructuring processes, both economic and socio-political. The tendency to socially reproduce educational inequalities has only heightened due to the competitive market forces that characterized globalized societies. Parents and students alike are engaged in evolving new strategies to catch up with changing times and acquire a share for themselves in the benefits of higher education. An interesting fallout of this process is the continued oppression of those who cannot participate in this race for higher education and its resultant accomplishments and lifestyles. The next stage of classification is that of professionals who emerge from such social reproduction of education and resultant economic resources. Even from the middle classes, a new elite group emerges in response to their skill and qualification to work as managers, entrepreneurs, and professionals. Those who fail to achieve educational accomplishments from such national or international connections have to be content with such jobs as teachers, nurses, or workers. National situations and economic changes. In the last 25 years, since the introduction of globalization, a striking change in the national social horizon is the competition between social groups for economic benefits and social visibility. An important dimension of this process is the decline of the welfare state and gradual rise of the market. Bourdieu described these losing communities as the new poor who suffer from poverty of position as different from poverty of condition characterized by low status and socially degraded livelihoods. Changes in the school infrastructure and learning skills and aids. A number of changes have affected the way the school used to perform before, such as, for instance, the focus on skills rather than subject matter, ongoing evaluation rather than examinations, and invisible pedagogy. Obviously, students from less resourceful families suffer from handicaps relating to lack of cultural and information capital. Rural-urban contrasts. In the last few decades, the factors determining social mobility have included exodus from rural areas to urban and stay in the latter as one of the trends towards achieving greater social mobility. The living environment impacts education and schooling to a large extent, proved by the changes in the urban populations of the world's great cities and towns addressed as collective capital. Impact of positive discrimination strategies. In most countries today, there are practices of positive discrimination and segregation in the school setup caused by progressive educational policies. Comprehensive planning has directed education at the school level to develop the mental and physical personalities of children with several aids and exposures. In India, the government at the center introduced Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, under the umbrella of which a number of school reforms have been instituted to ensure compulsory and quality education to all children in rural and urban areas. The Right to Education Act provides the right to schooling in private educational institutions for children from lower socio-economic groups, in the absence of which it was impossible for them to get admission into these schools owing to high costs of admission, fee, accessories, etc. The policy here and in various other countries intends to gear up a suitable environment for quality and equality and access in school education. Positive discrimination does not stop here in India, but extends to college and university education, where communities from lower and vulnerable background obtain seats considered to be a passport to government-private employment later. A scheme well meant is running into rough weather because of the attitude of many private school managements opposed to the idea of non-capitation seats. Choice of school. A critical factor in the context of schooling in the globalized and privatized economy is the choice factor that individuals exercise while using resources. In theory, the poor households are given the freedom to choose the type of education which they desire to access, but in reality, they have to struggle to gain the kind of support services that the advantaged groups have. Also, to obtain equal outcomes, parents have to strive to provide additional inputs such as tuitions and electronic devices. These are inclusive policies to encourage the out-of-school children, the not so intelligent students, and those coming from vulnerable background with no proper access to nutritive food, clothing, basic amenities, all of which are also considered essential today in the grooming of a child to become a capable student. But the poor have very little space to make choices. Decentralization, accountability, and transparency. Changes and challenges to teachers and schools. The process of social reproduction of education in the globalized era is not restricted in its impact to only the parents and students, but it is engulfed the entire gamut of the system of education, where even the teachers and the school managements have risen to the occasion and call for better performance. Competition among schools is another result of social reproduction of education, owing to recent trends caused by globalization and related processes. Schools are pressurized to respond to the call of the market for capable graduates or highly educated children, the seeds of which are sown in the school. Here comes the tussle between well-established schools with built-up reputation over decades vis-à-vis the newly established schools. The latter, in their eagerness to strive to become like the former, place severe restrictions on teachers and students, such as long working hours, new curriculum, extracurricular activities, physical education, sports, karate, life skills, swimming, dance, fine arts, etc. The concept of school towards the community has gained momentum under the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan in India. The community where the school is located is given the responsibility to look into the functioning of the school with the concepts of equity, justice, and sustainability in view. Schools are striving to keep a good image and performing image by taking extra cautions that students don't drop out. Thus, educational institutions are undergoing both pedagogical and organizational changes. There are changes in teachers' duties, school administration, and organization. In the long or short run, this makes teachers neglect the interests of students from unequal groups and adopt a disproportionate approach to offer their services with less internal commitment and moral outlook. The Indian context. India made significant strides after independence to make education accessible to all in the country, especially to the vast majority of its underprivileged sections. The immediate need was to lift or eradicate the barriers to education for the poor and the vulnerable sections of society, and to provide equal access to quality and effective education. A number of programs and policy options followed. The New Education Policy, Adult Literacy Program, National Literacy Mission, Operation Blackboard, and so on, aimed at emphasizing equality in accessing education. The NLM, for example, strove to remove prejudices and complexes transmitted through caste and other traditional institutions. It also aimed at imparting functional literacy to the 15 to 35 years age group by the year 1990 and an additional 50 million by 1995. Other issues relating to the result of social inequality, such as dropping out of school and compulsory education by 1995, were also addressed. For the unavoidable out-of-school children, both for those who never went and those who dropped out, non-formal education was instituted through government and non-governmental agencies. To further strengthen the gender dimension of education and literacy, women's development was added as a component in all programs and policies. As girls are more prone to forcibly drop out of school, special attention was given to their needs. Likewise, the Navodaya schools came into existence to take care of providing open avenues for education, particularly in rural and tribal pockets of the state and outside of it. Vocationalization of education, open universities, and reforms in exams were also the main goals of the emerging educational policies. Scholars have identified twin roles for education. The first views education as a tool for social domination and control, and the other views education as a liberating force and correlate of social justice. It is thus important to discuss both the positive and negative impacts of the system of education while analyzing a subject such as social reproduction of education. Education can also be seen as a positive force challenging the social reproduction of inequalities and hierarchies. In the context of India, the impact of governmental efforts to strengthen the educational base of the rural and tribal homes is dependent on the type of management of the schools. Medium of instruction, financial outlays, resources and facilities in their command, access to school, etc. are significant parameters to assess the performance of the school in developing the personalities of its students. The efforts of the government and others, community-based organization and civil society groups in the last 3-4 decades in India have made a dent on the reproduction of unequal social representation of children in education. Inclusive educational policies has contributed to limiting the barrier of caste-based oppression and marginalization of communities which were at the bottom of the social hierarchy from accessing education as an instrument for change and social mobility. The post-1970s situation is particularly interesting in this context. Integrated social inclusion programs such as the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan and others have led to large-scale coverage of children in both pushing them to schools and for ensuring that they remain there irrespective of gender, caste, class and regional differences in traditional access, values and authority. While it is an improvement over the earlier unequal social reproduction of education and development, the progressive policies and strict implementation over the decades following the 1990s in particular have certainly diminished the forces of social and educational inclusion. But at the same time, education is continued to be used as a tool in the reproduction of equality due to its cost, ownership and capabilities of children and their parents to avail the benefits offered under programs and policies. It has fallen often under myriad of forces of power and hierarchy that define the social context and the content of education. Therefore, there is continued social reproduction of social inequality through education, but it is also true that education has liberated many with built-up capabilities and exposure to opportunities. The responsibility of providing basic education to all is firmly written in the law of nearly most countries. National constitutions often mandated free and universal primary education. National and state legislatures have enabled laws to govern the provision of basic education, and government and local administrations adopted regulations to implement these laws. Improving educational effectiveness is defined as increasing the number of primary schools whose students master the core knowledge and skills of the curriculum. Although poor quality education exists at all levels, improvement is urged at the primary level, where children develop their basic attitudes and approaches to learning. Improving the quality of education for students in primary schools is a prerequisite for developing the human resource base required to meet the changing technology demands of the 21st century. In this module, you were introduced to the ways by which education can act both as a supporter of social hierarchies, unequal distribution of resources for gaining access to educational opportunities, and also the positive impact that it can have on the lives of groups that have been kept out of the race for attaining equality. Social reproduction of education basically helps us to revisit the institution of education from different perspectives, and also to understand the simple truth that conferment of equal educational opportunities does not necessarily ensure equal utilization of opportunities. Even today, in spite of the Constitution and other legal provisions ensuring that caste, gender, class, region, religion, race do not act as a barrier to access educational opportunities, in reality, these continue to hold society in their sway. And education, as one of the institutions in this society, continues to be influenced by the play of the power forces.